Hello friends! We're counting down to the holidays with 12 days of Christmas drawings. The goal of this mini-series is to kickstart a daily habit of painting in Procreate in a fun, low-pressure way. So I invite you to grab your pencil, get comfy, and draw along with me. Today we're going to be painting this sweet and simple candy cane. Let's first create a new canvas, and I have mine set to 4,250 pixels wide by 3,200 pixels tall at 300 dpi. These are essentially the dimensions of the iPad, so the canvas should fit your screen. If you don't have enough storage on your iPad for a file this large, you can use the pre-formatted screen-sized canvas, which will give you the same aspect ratio, but at a smaller size and lower resolution. Here's a really quick look at the sketching process. I used the 6B pencil for this sketch, and as always, you're welcome to draw this illustration in your own style, or you can skip the sketching process altogether because I created a template for you, which you can use as a guide for the painting. There's a link in the description for the free download. And I just want to mention, with the downloads, you'll also receive a color palette, which you can import directly into Procreate. The palette includes the base colors that I'll be using, but you'll often see me incorporate other colors as well. Feel free to add to or adjust the base palette as you see fit. Let me show you how to import and use the template. First, I'm just going to turn off my sketch layer. Now, go to the Actions menu, tap Add, then tap Insert a Photo. If it's already downloaded and saved, it should be in your camera roll. Tap to import, and this is what we'll use as our guide. Go to that template layer, tap on the N, and change the blending mode to multiply. Then reduce the opacity so the template is transparent. Create a new layer, and make sure to drag it below the template layer. Since the candy cane will have a lot of white in it, let's change the background color so it stands out. Tap on the background layer, and I'm going to choose a really light peach, which is just an altered version of the coral color from the palette. Now let's choose our brush. Open up the brush library, go down to the basics set, and we're going to work with Ringaruna. That's a fun one to say. The first color we're going to use is white. I've got the brush set to about 12%, and we're going to outline and fill the candy cane shape. Now, one thing about this brush that I immediately noticed is that it's very pressure sensitive. So, for example, if you draw a line and increase your pressure as the line continues, the size of the stroke will change dramatically. So just keep that in mind when you're painting the outline. Do your best to maintain consistently light pressure as you're drawing these lines so you don't get that sudden shift in size. You'll notice that some areas are hidden behind the holly leaves, but we will be drawing the entire candy cane shape on this layer. So continue the line all the way down to the end. And like I mentioned in the last video, when you're drawing the curves, it's easier to tackle them one small section at a time. Turn off the template for a second and make sure you have a completely enclosed shape. You don't want there to be any gaps or places where the lines don't connect. If that shape is completely closed, you can now drag your color swatch into the shape to do a quick color drop fill. Zoom in so you can check your shape and clean up any wonky areas. Let's turn that template back on. Create a new layer right above that white base layer and make that new layer a clipping mask. Switch to the red from the palette and we're going to paint the stripes. We'll start with the large stripes, which are shaded on the template. So just follow the shape of that line and then fill that space with the red. If this is your first time using a clipping mask, what's happening here is that we've masked off the candy cane shape, so everything we paint on this layer is going to be confined to that shape. So if I were to turn off the clipping mask, you can see that we've painted well beyond the shape, but the mask is hiding all those extra bits. Okay, so continue adding the red stripes all the way down the length of the candy cane. Now let's paint this second set of stripes. Choose a second color. I'm going to try this bubblegum pink. And we're going to do this on another layer. So create a new layer and also make it a clipping mask. This new layer will also be masking the base layer. Now this stripe will be thinner and it will slightly overlap the red stripe, so there's no white space showing between the two. Of course, if you want there to be a bit of space between the red and pink stripes, you're welcome to do that as well. Whatever works best for you. Again, we're going to add those stripes all the way down to the end. And we'll just let this last one fill the remaining space. You can turn off your template and do a quick check to make sure those stripes look the way you want them to, and make adjustments as necessary. When you're done, turn the template back on, create a new layer above the stripes, then choose the spruce green from the palette. Let's outline the shape of the holly leaves. Again, make sure you completely close that shape so that you can drag the color swatch to fill with the color drop feature. Follow the same process for all the leaves. Remember not to press down too hard and keep a consistent pressure with your lines so that the stroke size doesn't shift too much. When that's done, go to the layer with the leaves, create a new layer right above it, and make that new layer a clipping mask. Now choose the holly green from the palette. Let's drop the brush size to maybe about 15%, and we're going to draw these lines on each leaf. Now this is where we can use that pressure sensitivity on the brush to our advantage. I'm just going to turn off the template for a second so that we can see this clearly. Now if you start the line with a light touch, then increase the pressure as you go along, you'll get this nice tapered shape. If you've never used a brush like this before, it might take a few tries to get the hang of it, but that's okay. You can always double tap to undo and try again. This is actually a great way to practice these tapered lines, which will in turn help with your brush control. Let's also add a little value contrast along the edges. I'm increasing my brush size to about 30%, and we're still working on the same clipping mask layer. We're just going to add this darker green along one edge of each leaf. Again, you can utilize the pressure sensitivity here to play with shifting the size of your strokes. Now let's add a couple highlights to those leaves. We're still working on the same clipping mask above the leaf layer, and I'm going to switch to the grayish blue from the palette. The mint green would also work well. Now add a couple highlight lines on the opposite side. Once again, you can experiment with how much pressure you use so your lines will vary in size and shape. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Let's turn the template back on, and now we can paint those berries. So create a new layer above the leaves and switch to the red from the palette. Drop the brush size back down to about 10%, and we're going to outline the entire cluster of berries. Remember to make sure you have a nice completed shape so that you can use the color drop feature. Now we can add a few lines to create some visual separation. Create a new layer above the berries, make the new layer a clipping mask, then switch to the deep red. This berry is at the bottom of the bunch, so there'll be a shadow cast here and here. So let's start with a line along this edge. And we can add another line along this edge as well. This one is on top, so it will cast a shadow along this edge here. And I'm going to add a curve to this shadow just to stylize it a bit. Let's turn off the template to see how that looks. Okay, I think that works. Now we can add a tiny V shape to each of those berries. Then switch to a lighter color. I'm going to use this peach color, but the coral from the palette will work as well. Use that color to add a little highlight line to each berry. Turn the template back on. And while we're here, let's switch to the coral from the palette if you weren't using it already. And make sure to create a new layer. I've got the brush size set to about 16%. And we're just going to follow the lines for all the snowflakes, dots, and stars. Remember that the template is just there as a guide. You're welcome to draw different shapes or skip this part entirely if you prefer. All right, that's done. Let's turn off the template to have a look. And the last thing I think we need is a little more separation between the candy cane and the background. So let's add a drop shadow. Create a new layer, then drag it all the way down so it sits below the base layer with the candy cane shape. Let's stick with the same coral color, increase the brush size to about 30%, then add an offset line along the right side of the candy cane. And don't forget this section by the hook. Okay, we've got our shadow. Now let's soften it a little, and we're going to do that by creating a blur. Go to the Adjustments menu, select Gaussian Blur, and here it shows the amount of blur, which is currently at 0%. And if you drag your pencil to the right, you'll see this slider move, the blur starts to happen, and the percentage counter changes accordingly. If you keep going to the right, it will blur to the point of disappearing, but as long as your pencil stays down, you can reel it back in by dragging your pencil back to the left. I think I'll set this to about 13%. Tap on the Adjustments menu again to exit that mode, and you see how that helps lift the candy cane off the background a little. And with that final touch, I think we're all done. If you'd like to try a more three-dimensional candy cane drawing, you can watch this tutorial, which I'll link in the corner and in the description below. I hope you had fun with this process, and I hope you'll join me for all 12 days of this holiday painting practice. There's a link in the description for where you can download the free drawing templates and get a peek at all the drawings we'll be creating for the next 12 days. I've also added a link to the 12 Days of Christmas Drawings playlist so you can easily find all the content in this series. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.